for us, our ability to just execute events and manage events globally is something that we take a lot of pride on. And in this journey, we have had the opportunity to really work with client organizations and other partners who have really built and driven truly global programs, right? And what really comes out from those programs is, yes, there is an ambition, there is a mandate, but there are a lot of challenges that are both unique to some companies and common across. And the idea of this panel and this discussion is to be able to explore a few of those. We have three great leaders. We actually had detailed bios for all of them. I think we should circulate it. And because each one of them read like a million words, right? As in, really. So HP, Atlassian, Red Hat are very unique organizations in their own right. But at the same time, I think there are a few commonalities, right? One of the commonalities really is they have extremely ambitious volunteering agendas. They have achieved those. They have a very, very global, diverse workforce. And they have been able to drive volunteering globally, overcoming a bunch of challenges, right? So we'll start off by talking to each one of these leaders here to give a brief introduction both about themselves and the global programs that we run. We can start off with Stephanie from HP. Stephanie, if you can take some time both to talk about yourself, your background, and the program that you run at HP.
Sure. So, Steph Bormann, I am the Deputy Director of the HP Foundation. And then as an HP Inc. employee, I'm the Global Head of Employee Giving and Volunteering. And we have 6 programs that we run. So Employee Relief, Employee Cash Match, Employee Volunteering, HP Life, which if you haven't gone in, it's a great one to do with your nonprofits because it's a free platform that anyone, anywhere can take one of 34 classes in 8 languages in basic business and IT skills. We have disaster relief. So we have a bunch. And yeah, and I am here with Carol and Chin. Right. Shout out to Carol, who, as I like to say, is the Simon to our Simon and Garfunkel volunteering team. HP has an ambitious agenda to volunteer 3.5 million employee volunteer hours by 2030. We're at 1.6 million, I think, so far. So we'll get there, no problem. And we have 40, I think at the end of last year, almost 46% of our employees participated in our volunteer programs. And we've raised that volunteering percentage about 180% over the last 4 years. So we've really been working, we really kind of at the beginning, like 2016, when HP Inc. and Hewlett-Packard Enterprise became 2 different companies, we said, we want to take people, we want tourists, and in our giving and volunteering programs, and then we're going to convert them to travelers, and now we're converting them to guides. So, yeah.
Great. Parnita, first of all, thanks a lot for joining us all the way from Singapore. Other than, of course, the team from Goodera from India, I think you're the one who have traveled the most to be a part of this session. So really appreciate your presence there.
No, glad to be here.
Would love to hear more about, of course, as in we had an interesting conversation about how you landed up in your job. Now that you do the journey that you have traveled, would be great to hear a few things about that aspect and also, of course, the program that you run at Red Hat.
Great, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Parnita. I lead the volunteering and giving programs at Red Hat, and we're an open source software company. We're a 20,000 strong organization, which basically means we have a lot of passionate folks who want to sort of, have so many great ideas to kind of give back as well. Before I talk a little bit about the programs at Red Hat, I've been in this space for a couple of years now in different capacities as a consultant to different, nonprofit organizations and multinational companies. Also had a startup of my own, which focused a lot more on sort of incubation of new ideas or like new young social entrepreneurs as well. So I've been on a few different, sides of stakeholders as well to kind of have a more well-rounded approach to, volunteerism and giving at organizations. More specific to Red Hat, we focus a lot more on volunteering and matching gifts as a program, which I will touch on, a little bit throughout the conversation as well. But a large part of what we do as volunteering is really make that as a part of our culture. When we say open source, we believe in communities at the center of all the work that we do, and that reflects in the way we design our programs, through a program called Red Hat Cares, which is essentially, all things volunteering and all things sort of giving back as well. So communities remain at the center of all the work that we do as a part of, the regular scope of work of Red Hat, and also the work that we do within the Red Hat Cares as a program as well. A little bit more in terms of just volunteerism, we try and, put that together with benefits so that in such a way that, when you volunteer, you're not just giving your time, but you're also sort of creating value for the nonprofits that our employees volunteer with. Because for every hour that they volunteer, we give them $15, which they can accumulate and then sort of make a donation to an organization of their choice. So, just connecting volunteering with giving in some ways has, helped us multiply the impact of, the contributions of our employees. And I would say that's, something that's coming up quite a bit for us. Volunteering is, I wouldn't say new to Red Hat, but it has increased in the last 2 years to a point where now it's become a big part of our culture. We're also having like every new employee that joins the organization has to compulsory sort of experience volunteering as a part of the culture as well, right? So that's been a big win for us as an organization, because that's really, helped us establish that giving back and communities are a big part of, what we believe in culture as well. So, yeah.
Thanks for that. And Mallory, now over to you, right? As an Atlassian iconic new age company when it comes to just giving and volunteering, a lot of us actually look up to the kind of, diverse volunteering penetration and, the sheer strength of employee participation that you're able to drive. Would love to, again, know more about you and the program that you run.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Mallory Burke. I am the Senior Manager of Global Engagement Programs at Atlassian. And Atlassian's about 13,000 employees. We're collaboration software tools. We're a remote-first company since the pandemic, and so we are located practically all over the world, with major offices in about, I think, 12 locations globally. I've been with the company, I think I said, for about almost 8 years, and have seen massive growth. When I started, we were about 5,000 employees, and we're now about 13,000. And my team as well has quadrupled in size, so really kind of growing what we do. Over the years, we've spent a lot of time kind of ebbing and flowing with the times around volunteering, group volunteering, team volunteering, how to build it into our team KRs, how to incentivize volunteering in different ways. Our employees get 40 hours of volunteer time off a year and $1,000 matching, and that's kind of the base level. And we just launched about 3 weeks ago a brand new employee engagement strategy that we call Foundation Rewards, and it's all about, in the same vein of like the tourists and the kind of champion work, it's movers, shakers, and change makers, and so helping people on their impact journey up the ladder. So how do we, reward people at the top level for, consistent engagement, long-term engagement with the same nonprofit, and giving them, bigger, bolder incentives. And we also do a lot of work around global education, so we fund really innovative financing and innovative programs for global education and, supporting the workforce of the future. We also really try to bring our products to nonprofits, and how do we support them through skilled volunteering. So lots of work, but excited to get into this conversation. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. We can just probably spend the next segment focusing on a favorite activity, right? We can crib and whine about the challenges that we face while truly designing and driving a global program. Stephanie, the 40 days of doing good program, we were talking about it probably taking 400 days of planning, right? So what goes into it? As in, what are some of the unique challenges that you face when you set up such a big and ambitious agenda to galvanize such a diverse organization like HP?
So it's called 40 Days of Doing Good, and the reason that we started calling it that, we didn't set out to have 40 days. We set out to have one day or 1 week, and then people are, and so my favorite question is still like, well, what about, we're gonna have our volunteer day in February. And we're like, we gave you 40 days. Can't you get in there? So that is a challenge, but it's really been a great way for us to take teams and let them volunteer together. We added something called We Day into it this year, where business units and functional organizations will find time to volunteer together. There's a grant piece, so if you volunteer with more than 5 employees in a digital equity related project, you can apply for a grant on behalf of that organization for like probably up to 10 grand. So that's been really great. And then we're always trying to just gamify it, right? So we don't at HP do dollars for doers, but we do $25 per person if you volunteer with 5 or more people. And that was based on research that we had that showed when you volunteer with your colleagues and your leader, your enthusiasm for your workplace goes up. So we also tried to do that. We have a Get in the Action award, where if you post a picture of you or your teammates actually doing something, you can get a reward credit for that. This year I've got an informal thing I'm calling Bounty Hunter, which is where you have to, if you can take a picture of a level 1 leader volunteering, we'll give you a $100 reward credit. And so, yeah, so it's challenging, I guess, to your original question. Aside from getting people to like get in that 40-day time frame, I would like to see more leadership support. I think that's a challenge. Yeah, that's definitely a challenge.
And let's probably explore that a bit further, right? As in, given that there is an appetite and a mandate and the ambition, right? In spite of that being articulated on a very practical basis, why do you think even a 40-day window sometimes gets difficult to drive convergence? Point number 1. Mm-hmm. And 2, why sometimes a perceived lack of leadership support, as in very practical problems that all of us face, right?
Yeah, you know, I think as a practical problem, it's, even though we know the date of our volunteer campaign, we know that, you know, HP gives you 4 paid hours a month to volunteer anytime during the year. So we encourage volunteering all year round. I think that the specific, maybe actual kind of volunteer opportunities are not set up far enough in advance, right? So like my leader is our chief marketing officer, and his chief of staff was telling me, well, you know, Antonio's calendar is set about 6 months in advance. I was like, well, I didn't know 6 months ago that we were going to have the volunteer thing next week, you know, or next month or in 2 months, right? So I think it's a lot of that. Yeah.
Got it. Parnita, if you can talk about, you know, Red Hat, as in you did speak about 40 plus countries and 20,000 employees, right? How do you plan this? Isn't this a nightmare to just plan and execute within a short window of time?
Yeah, and I would say this wasn't overnight, right? I think this has been a journey for us over the past year and a half, where we've really sort of moved from being, getting engagement from like 17 countries to like 41, and that's been a massive jump. I do have a shout out to Goodera, because I think you guys have been fantastic in, being an extension of our team to be available where we as a team of 3 running the program globally have not been able to sort of, go out there and be available or make that support available as well. The other bit was for us, we have a massive employee base that's just so truly global in nature, right? And our remote employees are a big part of, the overall population as well. And I think post-pandemic, we're all sort of, trying to get that engagement back and, trying to get this bunch of amazing folks engaged and, just being a part of the culture and experiencing things that, usually we get to experience in an office. So that's been a massive challenge for us, starting out right after the pandemic as well. But I would say, how do you get that sense of team? How do you get that sense of belongingness? How do you tease that culture or influence that culture in a remote sort of setup as well has been something that, we've been facing as a challenge as well. And a few things that I would say helped us is just creating equitable experiences across the globe that just, does not matter where you come from or, where you're kind of based. Using tools like Benevity has helped us quite massively as well, because that just means, as an employee, you would get rewarded for every volunteering contribution that, you would sort of make as well, regardless of where you're based, right? So that sort of gives people a sense of, oh, I have the same equitable experience as an employee that's, based in the office as well. Talking about our open source culture, we leverage that quite a bit as well, where we really, really get our employees to lead some of these initiatives that they are passionate about, right? And sort of meeting them where they're, where they are or where they feel sort of passionately about has obviously helped us. A mix of, I would say, hybrid and, remote volunteering opportunities as well has been working pretty well. I think, some of our, I would say, key moments were when we sort of ran a couple of events in the office in a hybrid setup, and we had a similar set of remote employees volunteering while being on a screen, working with somebody in the office as well. So you kind of get that sense of energy while still not being able to, kind of be in that office, right? And that was great, the kind of feedback we received from our employees to, have that opportunity to connect with someone they typically wouldn't have the opportunity to, work really pretty well for us. And then I think, just making a broad stroke at just going out there and saying, hey, volunteering is a part of our culture, right? Making sure that every new hire that joins the company has the opportunity to, kind of experience this as a part of our culture has been game-changing for us, that was that one experience where our, I would say, new hire onboarding used to be online, thanks to the pandemic, and we brought it back in person. And as a part of that in-person experience, volunteering was meant to be a part of a showcase or part of that experience as well, right? So when they kind of go back in their remote setups or environments, they kind of know there's nothing stopping them from being a volunteer champion, either in the virtual space or, just creating hyper-local opportunities in their own communities with other employees that might be based out there as well, was a great way to sort of get everyone to be engaged. So I would say, that's really helped us get into the nooks and corners of where our employees are based as well. And that's, thanks to all the growth that we've been able to achieve in the year and a half.
Right. And tell me one thing, as in given that there would be several initiatives across the organization, right, that would have to account for the geographical diversity, right? Are the challenges around driving a volunteering program globally different from any of the other programs?
I think we love the fact that there is that color across the globe because it comes with that cultural diversity as well. And that's why we sort of turn back to our volunteer champions who are the subject matter experts of their ground, right? So we trust and rely on the knowledge that comes from our volunteer champions to be like, hey, you got to tell us what's going to work in your community and let's respond to that, because they are the ones who are based in the community and, kind of understand the needs a lot better than we do, sitting at a global team and trying to solve a problem for something that's in Japan without even having that, local know-how. That's where we kind of rely a lot on our volunteer champions to be like, tell us what's the need, give us organizations that you think, are someone we can work with as well, and sort of put those two things together and, again, make it ground up, make it very employee-led, which has probably helped us.
Got it. So a lot of localization in that aspect, right? So Mallory, while there is a unique shared DNA across the organization to give back, you have countries in which you have large workforces, right? And these are inherently cultures are different, right? What are some of the challenges that you're faced in being able to meet the requirements and the needs of all of these different geographies while still trying to drive a kind of a unified program, right? So really the difference between localization versus a grand campaign.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few answers here. I think one big piece has been, because our company is remote first, we come back together. We call it intentional togetherness. Feels like a buzzword, but it's very much like when we come together, it's to build community, right? It's to build, the fact is we can work on Zoom. We don't have to come back together, to do work. So how do we spend the time together actually connecting and becoming a team? And so a lot of that revolves around, skill building, design thinking workshops, volunteering. And then, so when we have offsites, we've been able to rely a lot on Goodera to kind of help bring a lot of our programs into those different regions, hard to reach regions. We also have a lot of partners globally that we rely on. So we rely on our champions in these regions to tell us about these partners, and we, build relationships with them. And then we've also helped Goodera build relationships with those organizations as well. As I was talking about before, our new program, we used to have these kind of champion hubs in our offices. And as we went remote first, we felt that it was really unfair to have nonprofits that we were funding and working with in San Francisco, in Bangalore. But what about Hyderabad and Gdansk and, all these other places around the world that we couldn't really, invest in from a funding or volunteering perspective. And so I think our new program allows people to invest locally, and so that program brings, the funds to them when they do certain actions and when they do certain activities. We don't have dollars for doers either, but it's more about what you're doing in your communities, and that activates actions, and then you get funds that you can give locally. So I think, we kind of have a little bit of everything happening. So we want to be able to invest in our local communities. We want to be able to support in, intentional gatherings. And then we do have a few campaigns a year, a couple, I should say, larger scale campaigns where we're trying to, thread the needle around the world. So we have a big campaign coming up in May. We call it May It Forward. So it's all about a ripple effect of kindness. And how do we, bring, generic themes to each week that can kind of connect stuff that's happening in Australia that might be very, I wouldn't say irrelevant, but maybe it's not the same kind of demands that we're looking at here in the US. But everyone can kind of thread that needle if the theme is pretty basic and bold, helping our neighbors, right? That means something different to every community. So I think, I think it's definitely, bringing a few different opportunities to the table and letting people kind of choose how they get involved. But yeah, it's I don't know. It's a good way to kind of, level the playing field around the world and bring it home.
Great.
Yeah.
Stephanie, you want to share your thoughts on this aspect of a global campaign versus localization? How have you, as in we did speak about you being more regions rather than individual countries in the way you plan and run a program, but how does that work at HP?
Yeah, I think it's, again, we give people a campaign, we give people a lot of very intentional comms, toolkits, and then we also try to also regionalize it. For example, to set up our giving campaign, we have a volunteer summit, and we'll hold one volunteer summit in maybe, America's, your time frame, something that's convenient for them, and we'll have people, the speakers are all, sharing their best practices from those two regions. And then we'll have another one that is held, in Asia, like a time frame that'd be easy for them. And again, those people who are sharing best practices are talking about projects they led in those regions. Our monthly champions call, same thing. We try to let kind of a variety of speakers. We mix up the times, again, to keep it so that people in Asia will come. We partner really closely. We have a very big office, for example, in Singapore. We have an entire Singapore Social Impact Committee, and we partner very closely with them. So again, we give them the structure, but we let them localize it through their nonprofit partners, through their selection of grantees, and then through their presentation of best practices.
Got it. Parnita, anything on those lines as driving enablement through like a central team for everybody else to still have the ability to do those programs, but still not feel the load, quote unquote, of doing it alone. So how do you manage that?
Yep. So like I said, we're a team of 3 trying to really, sort of mobilize everything that we've been for like 20,000 employees. And that's where the structure sort of comes in, right? So very similar to HP as well, we would have these campaigns that we sort of run throughout the entire year. We have our, this week celebration of all things culture in the organization. We call it the We Are at Hat Week. As a part of that, we celebrate the day of volunteering, like the Global Day of Volunteering, that, is just a global day where everyone takes the time and the opportunity to sort of, at least pick that one day to sort of give back, which really helps, right? So I think centralizing some of the structures really, really helps us, have a baseline across the globe. And then, sort of, again, using our volunteer champions as an extension of our team to kind of localize some of the efforts, and do this as well, right? But in incentivizing our volunteer champions to feel like be in that leadership position to be able to actually lead some of these volunteering opportunities on the ground definitely helps us push through the last mile delivery by, sort of enabling them as well, giving them the resources that we absolutely can. We do also, have like a regular check-in with like our volunteer champions just to make sure they feel supported, because this is over and above their day job. So it takes a lot of time and passion for individuals to, kind of drive the last mile delivery of the work as well. But then again, having that baseline structure of campaigns and, maybe some like tools or like templates across that they can be, using as a part of the larger campaign. We can provide the communication support, but the last mile delivery, again, really comes from our volunteer champions. And I guess that's how we sort of, get the outreach.
Got it. Mallory, one of the things that I wanted to, know more about is you were speaking about a very interesting practice, where different teams across the globe pick up the mandate to centrally design and run a program yesterday when we were talking about it. For example, one campaign is run by the team in the US, the next by the team in India. I think it'll be great if you could share more about that.
Yeah. So as our strategies are kind of shifting and changing, campaigns are a constant. Like, we're always going to have a campaign. And so how do we both share the load and also bring cultural differences and different kind of perspectives to different campaigns? So the ownership of the campaign, or the leadership, I should say, kind of switches hands. So we have a Week of Good in December around Giving Tuesday kind of week, and then we also have our May campaign. And so we kind of, amongst our team, we switch who owns and runs that campaign. And so it really does bring a different flavor, a different perspective. And my team in particular is based globally, so we have someone in India, in the US, in Australia, and in the Philippines. So it kind of switches hands, and we're able to see it from a different light. And so that theme is coming from that person's heart, and their energy is going into it. So that's been kind of something we've done more in the last 2 years. So it's brought some interesting challenges, and I think challenges is mainly like time zone. Sometimes meetings can be very challenging, but has brought some great new ideas and perspectives and life into a campaign that could feel very flat year after year doing the same thing.
Got it. Great. So there is a target, there is a mandate, you've set up all the foundations, you've taken the calls on localization versus having a global campaign. How do you deal with your heart being in your mouth, in the sense, how do you get visibility? How do you get to see if things are going as per plan, going out of whack?
Yeah, metrics, right? I mean, I think all of our companies are very data-driven. We built kind of our own volunteer dashboard so that we could see, basically up to the month. You can kind of look at the hours, the participation, the top 10 NGOs that people volunteered for. So we can see that pretty much down to like a 5th level manager. You can see it by an organization, you could see it by a country, so kind of all those different things. And then when we go into one of our really big campaigns, we'll show just by business unit from the last year. And, shame is a powerful motivator. These people are very competitive. Yeah.
Parnita, you want to share something about how you do this?
Yeah, I think for us, it's largely about, impact measurement is so necessary because that really just shows everyone, how their contributions have led to where the organization's going to be at, right? But I think it starts with education for us. So we focus a lot more on getting our volunteer champions to be educated enough to be like, the ownership of, that impact measurement lies also on our volunteer champions, right? It doesn't always have to come back to the central team, where at that scale it just gets, a bit out of hand as well sometimes at that scale. But yeah, that's why we educate like our volunteer champions to, sort of help us be that extension of our team to be like, help us collect that measurement of impact in some ways as well. And then, again, I think we've had a great sort of executive sponsorship from our leaders, who've been, leveraging volunteering as a part of their QBRs and, as a part of their sort of leadership offsites as well. Getting the leaders to talk about that, is a great way to sort of also influence that change and, just show and tell in terms of, hey, as a leader, and again, like that, pressure in a leadership meeting to say, hey, a couple of the leaders have done this in their QBRs, and that probably drives the participation in some of the other, teams. I think that's helped us quite a bit as well in terms of, just measuring the impact. And I would say lastly, just celebrating it, right? We've been very careful about the kind of goals we've set for ourselves. We want to set ourselves up for success. And then once we get to that goal, celebrating that and, doing a shout out across the organization that every volunteer hour that our employees have contributed to has led us, to kind of reach that goal, right? So celebrating that together with our employees has been a great way to, keep getting them to like, track their time and, just showing the impact of the work and then collectively celebrating that at the end of it.
Got it. Mallory, is it what, as in two ends of the spectrum, right?
Yeah.
Name and shame on one and then celebrations on the other?
Yeah.
Where do you fall?
We're definitely more on the celebrating side. I think, well, we've ebbed in, we've dabbled in the shame area as well. I think that, we really do want to celebrate our employees and create that community for them. And so, a big part of it is, executive sponsorship, like you're talking about. Like each of our campaigns, we enlist a different executive to kind of share a video and promote the campaign with us, get their teams involved, working way ahead of schedule to get them involved in a different, goal for their team, around a campaign or an annual goal, like how do we set their team up for success to, same, metrics and driving towards a certain metric for their team, like our customer support team, how are they engaged with Atlassian nonprofit customers and how do we track that? But, with our new platform and program, we're really invested in kind of lifting up those change makers and telling their stories and creating that community for them. So we have like special Slack channel just for that group and kind of helping them share across the globe the different things they're doing in their community. So yeah, it's, a little bit of everything, right?
Got it. So, as in all three of you are already famous, but I'm sure this panel will make you a lot more famous. So let's just change tracks and talk about somebody comes to you in the cocktails tonight and, treats you like a professor and asks you a question, right? I want to drive a global program, right? And so, Professor Bormann, can you just give me 2 things that I should do, right? Just 2 things.
Wow, just 2?
I know.
I definitely would say if you don't have a champion network, I think that is like one of the easiest ways to start. And then I would just say, just start, right? I mean, I think we can all get in our own minds about let's design think and let's whatever. It's like just get a few people together wherever you are and do something, and then you're gonna fail. Just iterate. I mean, this is, many iterations later of how we came here. Yeah.
So start, iterate, and then of course have a champion network.
Yes. Start, fail, iterate.
All right. Parnita, you want to
Yeah,
share?
I think I would say focus on inclusion, right? And I don't mean inclusion in a DEI context. I think it's inclusion from a point of view of different profile of employees. I think, have a different way of operating or a different demand when it comes to volunteering and sort of giving back as well. So I think, just customizing a little bit in terms of, that inclusion element has really helped us. And then influencing volunteering as a part of culture, I would say that was, definitely that has helped us heaps, to just infuse that as a part of, the organization's culture to sort of give back or, work around communities. I would say these would be the two things to kind of get started.
Got it. I know I asked for two things, but I just want to double click on one of the two things that you spoke about. Inclusion, right? As in, at what stage, right? As in, are you talking about making them a part of the planning stage, execution? Because we are talking about a global program, right? And while it is easier to theoretically include, you again spoke about a fairly lean central team. So what kind of inclusion are we talking?
It starts at the design stage for us. So when we design a campaign, for example, I think that's being intentional to cater to like different profiles of, our employees as well, those that are in an office, those that are in a culturally very, colorful sort of office as well, and then those that are kind of remote as well, right? So intentionally designing that as a part of our campaign, I think that has really helped us. And it also feels all the employee base sort of, there is a little bit of everything for everyone. And I think that's what I mean by, sort of designing for everyone.
Thank you. Mallory?
I'm glad I got a few people ahead of me to think through what my answers are. I think for one, for sure, is embed yourself into the business, right? The business is always shifting and changing, and how do we, as a CSR team, social impact team, how do we ebb and flow with business demands and changes? So, be agile. That's a big one is, our goals can shift and change just like the businesses. And find your champions as well to bring these goals, into teams. So embed yourself into the team, the different teams at the company. And then also, again, I'll just say, like, the iteration is key. So, build yourself an MVP program and then just keep iterating on it until it's what you want it to be. And then I'm just going to throw a third one in there, and that's to have fun with this, right? Like, we are, I always say, like, the cultural, the values part of our company, we give people something to be proud of and happy about. I saw a message from a customer support manager to her team saying, like, I just got off the phone with an org that I've been working with for 2 years, and we're making a difference. We actually are. So, they feel like a nonprofit can bring them value in what they do. So I think just helping embed that into the culture is really important.
I just have to say this, I'm very impressed, right? Normally when we go to the third panelist, right, they say that, hey, I was about to say that, and, and Mallory not only said, okay, good that I'm last, and then instead of 2 gave us 4, right? So, but I think I can give you the liberty to do that, right? We'll just open it up for a few questions if we have. I have like one more question up my sleeve, but it depends on how much time you're going to spend answering audience questions.
Yeah, so I think that...
If you could repeat the question too, I couldn't get over
So
there.
Kristen just said, tell us how the foundation ties into HP Inc.'s brand. And I think, I think Kristen was there when we were kind of arm wrestling on how do we keep it separate and together. And So it is around digital equity and trying to accelerate. The company has a goal to accelerate digital equity for 150 million people. And so our kind of activities and grants and funding and all of it are in service of that. Yeah, thanks.
And our second and final question right here.
Hi, Rachel with 3M Company. So I'm curious if you can talk about your communication platforms for cascading opportunities out to employees that are remote or maybe not affiliated with a site. What I'm trying to do at 3M is provide volunteer opportunities for anyone that works for 3M anywhere in the world. And thinking about the communication platforms, do you have internal social media or do you do website? And so I imagine you have centralized ways of communicating. And then I would be curious if you know how some of your ambassador areas communicate as well. Thank you.
It'll be great if all three of you answer that. Yeah.
So we have all of it. And we can send out, for example, an all-employee email and then get even like metrics on the open rates and figure out, okay, which words were better messaging, which messaging did we get more traction on? We have a quarterly newsletter that has kind of all of our stuff. We have an internal social platform where, again, during our campaigns, we'll give you a $25 reward credit if you post the pictures. We put together a social media advisory kit so that all you have to do is put your picture in and then, kind of like what Goodera did, very easily pump it out on LinkedIn. I just started, as a mama too, I was like, how do I internalize my inner nag? And we got chat bots to go in and, all those ones that are like, hey, can you change your it's time to change your password. Ours is like, time to, log your volunteer hours. We got 52,000 hours out of that chat bot. So things like that, anytime you can just change the dial a little bit and then figure out what works, what doesn't. And then we have a SharePoint and we have Benevity. So you can just kind of see all the upcoming stuff as well.
Yep. I think for us, we try and do like central global communications as well. That just goes out at an email, if that's a campaign, we consolidate all the opportunities that our local offices might be, sort of creating for our employees as well, goes on our like intranet page as well. But I think nothing beats the local communication of either that's coming through Slack channels or like, your Google kind of conversations as well, or like local leaders or site leaders sort of, sending the communications out to their sites. I think just, makes it a lot more relatable as well. So people feel like, hey, this is sort of custom made to, my experience or like me and where I'm based and not some, because sometimes, you see when it comes to communications, especially if it's coming from a global point of view, they'll be like, hey, that's too far-fetched, that's not meant for me. So localizing that communication, I think that's definitely helped us. And then again, we have in-office hours, coffee chats, there are events that happen in the office as well, are another opportunity where, volunteering opportunities are sort of given as a shout out.
My microphone. Yeah, so, I don't have really anything else to add. I think we actually have regional leads, which is really nice, so having them have the voice rather than it coming from a random person, so making sure that that person can feel connected to their community and their region, so they're really the ones sharing the messages. But we've simplified kind of our Slack channels so we don't have like hundreds and it's being like, because I think it gets annoying, right? When you're constantly posting everywhere and everyone's like, I heard that already. So trying to get streamlined and then as much as we can get embedded into different, like events, town halls, see how many town halls you can get into throughout the company.
Thank you so much. We had one more minute, but AJ and Alicia are giving me the looks, so we're going to wrap it up here. The question that I had for them was the one other organization or the company that truly inspired them in terms of their approach to volunteering. So you can catch them during the break and still get them to answer the question. But this has been extremely insightful, helpful. I know we went severely off script. I don't even know why we did a prep call. But having said all of that, absolute pleasure. Thanks for, doing what you did. And thanks so much for your patience and your attention for this session. Yeah.